Our meeting, we'll start by saying the Pledge of Allegiance, if you join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll start with amendments to the agenda. Does anybody have any amendments to the agenda that they would like?
Go ahead.
Commissioner Huxley?
Just for the record, it's October 3rd, 2018.
That's what I've got on mine.
For this Board of Commissioner meeting. And I would like to pull on the consent calendar.
We're still on agenda.
Amendments.
Yeah. I would like to pull items D, 1, 4, and 5 for discussion.
1, 4, and 5. Okay, so we will put those right before E. How's that?
Okay.
Any other amendments to the agenda?
Madam Chair, that takes care of my consent calendar one I was going to pull out, which was number 4. I have several here I want to add to the agenda for consideration of the board. One is the building official, the hire for recent hire. I'll be here October 8th, and I would like to have some discussion on that and the gathering of facts. And I'd like to have board support on that. That's number 1.
I thought that decision was already made at the last meeting.
You know, you have been quite a budget hawk and guardian of the Treasury. So if you if you trust me to challenge that we may not have all the facts, this official is going to cost us about $9,000 a month, I believe, and I think you would likely be interested in that. It goes way over $100,000 a year, maybe 110, 115, and I think we need to discuss it, Madam Chair. And I think we can do that amicably, and I think it's very important for the public to know.
Commissioner Huxley?
I will not support that.
Okay.
Because I think you need a consensus, so I assume that's what you're going to...
Right.
I did send in an agenda routing slip, and that was refused arbitrarily by County Administrator Schroeder, and so that's why I'm happy to bring it up now. And it was in on time, too. So, it's a concern of mine. It's a concern for our employees. It's important to me, and I thought to you to get it out before the public. And so I don't think it'd be a long discussion, but I think we need to collect some facts on this, and so that's why I'm bringing it before the board now as an added addition to the agenda.
Council Huddle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think your comment was accurate. This was decided. It was also deliberated in exec session that we generally don't discuss publicly, but also the general rules, and we haven't adopted Robert's Rules of Order, but the general rules are to reconsider an item that's been decided. Typically, someone who voted in the majority on the decision has to bring up a reconsideration, and in this case, I think Commissioner Boyce was not in the majority, and therefore a Robert's Rules related approach would not allow reconsideration. So that's just, but it's really a board discretion item whether you want to revisit it or not.
So when did we vote on this? And I'm not sure if I recall what we voted on. This was administrator hire, and in fact I was challenged at what authority do I have any input on this decision. So obviously there's some confusion here, and that would justify, in my view, simple discussion, dialogue, perhaps even debate.
This happened at the last regular meeting. We went into executive session, and then we came out and voted on it.
And Commissioner Gold, you knew I was uncomfortable with us going into executive session, that we had an obligation to talk to the public, and how would you interpret that if you were part of the public, in the interest of open dialogue and transparency? And I still don't have my question answered as far as when did I vote on this? What did I vote on?
Whether to hire the new building inspector.
No.
The decision at the board level for department heads is only the only decision they have to make. Sorry, I don't have my mic.
If I may, the decision, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yeah. The only decision the board had input on was the salary. If I was requesting to go above the normal salary scale on it, I will say that if your salary scale had been adjusted with cost of living raises every year since 2014, it would have been within the range. But your salary scale for non-represented staff has not changed. And so therefore it was that way. So the only decision the board made was not the hiring. The only decision the board made was to authorize going above the salary range for the person. And we've made that decision already. His first day is Monday, so we're not revisiting that issue.
So I am correct, though, that you made the hire, and I've got a reference here. I have hired a new building official. This is from you on September 16th.
Yes, yep.
And as you know, if I may read just a couple sentences, or Madam Chair, do you want to put this on the agenda and talk about it later?
No, I'd prefer not to.
Okay, then I'm going to read it now. Thank you. As you know,
excuse me.
We're not discussing it.
Yeah, we're not discussing it. I wonder...
Was there any other agenda amendments?
Oh, I'm just getting warmed up, if you don't mind. I appreciate the respect here. So, clarify for me why we will not, if you would, Madam Chair, would appreciate it if you clarify for me why we're not going to hear this.
Because the decision was already made, number one, to go into executive session to talk about personnel matters. That was made. And then the decision outside of executive session was to determine whether the new hire could go outside the salary range. And not only that, the administrator has the authority to hire that individual. It's not up to us.
Go team, go. Okay, second one, if I may, is on the travel. Not too long ago, Madam Chair, you challenged me that I should prioritize my travel, and I offered you substantial documentation on how I spend that time. I think you know down deep that I travel incredibly efficient and try and manage that very well, spending a lot of my own money. And so for the last 3 months or 4 months, whatever there, until we have the 3 issues settled, which the 2 are, number 1, well, I'd like to have this on the agenda if we could. Is that something you might consider?
What specifically do you want on the agenda?
Well, I want to be able to travel, and I don't want to pay out of my own pocket anymore.
Well, all you
I'd
have
like
to
your
do
support.
is turn in the paperwork and we'll take care of it.
Okay. So meanwhile, I have a citation for $440, and I have a small claims deal where I have to go out and spend the money on a lawyer. And so if that's your, for the board to be able to reclaim $5,200, whatever it is. So is it your decision then that as we get close to the $1,000 on the restricted funds that I should just keep paying out of my own pocket? I want to know if I have your support to travel and if I have your trust to do it wisely and efficiently.
Commissioner Huxley?
As a point of order, these are for agenda amendments. So we are succinct. Somebody wants to propose an amendment. We get consensus. We put it on. If there's no consensus, we don't. We don't need to go on to pontificate for 5 or 10 or 15 minutes.
I certainly wouldn't be concerned that I have your support on travel then, Mr. Huxley. Is that fair to say? Go ahead. Administrator Schroeder.
I would say this discussion point will come up. One of the things on the agenda is approving and discussing new commissioner travel to the AOC conference in November. There is a budget. I think it'd be appropriate, Commissioner Boyce, to discuss that at that point because we'll be discussing the budget and the global budget for commissioner travel. So we're already being discussed this.
Okay, if we could maybe dovetail it in there, that might be very helpful. Thank you. Number 3, Madam Chair, is attorney funds. I don't know where we are on that. I think we've spent somewhere around $25,000. Somebody needs to clarify that, so that needs to be an agenda item. We are $1,000 over that budget for Attorney Bischoff, apparently, according to my emails, and so I think that needs to be clarified, as well as, you want to do it now?
Sorry, it's one point at a time, but I would think, Commissioner Boyce, that we will be addressing this with the Budget Committee on October 31st, because we'll be going line by line, if not line by line, at least department by department, and going through what we need, and do we need to make budget amendments at that time.
So meanwhile, we know we're $1,000 to $2,000, or we're just going to keep deficit spending. That's what it appears to me. Is that fair to say? And I still don't know for the attorney, the Portland firm apparently that we've hired, yes, Portland, to collect the $5,500 from my excess travel. Apparently, we don't even know what we're paying them yet. Is that fair to say? I mean,
Well,
I don't know.
They haven't done any work, and law firms typically bill at the end of the month. So I would expect to see a bill within the next couple of weeks from them for September if there was nominal work.
Okay, Madam Chair, just one quick question. I can let that one go.
Okay, good.
So did we budget $5,000 for that? I think in the beginning. I'm not sure.
If I remember correctly, Louise had told me that there was in the commissioner's budget, there was like $5,000 of discretionary professional service, and then there was legal fees of $25,000, or was it $20,000 plus the $5,000? We would have to look it up.
It's amazing. It's astonishing to me that we don't know.
Well,
we're just going to keep
how about
spending.
this? Let's talk about it at the budget meeting. I think that would be a more
So
appropriate
we're going to put it off
way.
3 weeks. Thank you. Number 4 is department managed meetings. I'll be ready to make a
And that's on the
presentation
agenda
then.
already.
And then I'd like to have, well, yes, thank you. You are correct on that. The last one, appreciate it, security for this building. We have some issues there, and I don't think I want to postpone it till another week or two. And so if we could have a discussion on that, Madam Chair. We did in April of 2017. I'd like to open the door on that and have your
So you want an
support.
update on where the security is on the building? Is that
If
what
we
you're
could just
saying?
have a discussion and might start the process for getting a plan together, I think it'd be very wise. That's all I have on that. Thank you. So do
Do you have an
a motion
update on that?
I have not even researched. I've heard.
I can give you an update.
I've heard about a proposal for security cameras at some point. I've not done any research. I've not done any review on it or read anything about it. So
How about this? Could you put it in your commissioner report?
Oh,
then-
yes, if you...
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Because you can put anything you want in your commissioner report, actually. So, okay, moving on. Any other amendments to the agenda? Okay, so do I have a motion to have the agenda as amended approved?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Call for the question?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on, public comments. Mary Rowe.
I am Mary Rowe. The number of homeless people in Curry County is increasing. The number of available rentals that low-income people qualify for has decreased. Due to vacation rentals, a recent influx of people into our county, and escalating rents that people cannot pay on their own and do not fall within the range of what the Housing Authority will issue housing choice vouchers for. And at the same time, when only about 15% of voucher recipients can utilize them, partially due to the difficulty of the process, the number of Housing Authority caseworkers has been reduced. At the same time, our safety nets have diminished alarmingly. Month-to-month motel rates in Brookings average about $10.50, and in Gold Beach are now up to $800 a month. The Outreach Gospel Mission has closed, and we no longer have other shelter for the homeless, not even an extreme weather shelter. Rates at the state parks are escalating. One can only stay in the National Forest for 2 weeks, and one of the 2 shelters in nearby Coos County recently closed. St. Timothy's Day Services in Brookings cannot be expected to take care of all of the homeless in Curry County. And there is no way for many homeless people to get there, nor is South County a safe place for them to sleep outside anymore. We are badly lacking services to our homeless in Central and North County. In Gold Beach, there are no public showers available to the homeless. People need showers for their health, their self-esteem, to be able to interact with others, to find jobs and housing, and for the health of the community. I'm here to ask if the showers at the fairgrounds could be used for the next year to shower the homeless after the firefighters leave the fairgrounds. Perhaps twice a week, overseen by organizations that work with the homeless, to ensure that the showers are left in good shape. Jerry Lynn Thompson, who is on the fair board, has agreed to present that to the board. Given that it is a county property, an endorsement from any of you would help. I hope that Gold Beach's substantial contribution to our county fairgrounds will influence your desire to help Gold Beach in this way. Perhaps giving part of a county transient lodging tax to the fairgrounds would help to make the use of their showers by the homeless possible after you help to create such a tax. Perhaps you're leveraging Brookings to give a tiny portion of their transient lodging tax to the fairgrounds, given that they want help from the county to have a health facility, would also help the fairgrounds to provide showers to the homeless. The fairgrounds helped Brookings during the Chetco Bar fire.
And the Klondike.
Okay. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Chair, I'd motion
As
to approve
amended.
the consent agenda, which will include items D2, D3, and D6.
Could I get a second on that?
Second, Madam Chair. Sorry.
Okay. Call for the question?
Aye.
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 Okay, now we took some items out of the consent agenda. The first one was D1, appoint citizens review task force members. Commissioner Huxley, you were the one that asked for that. I know there's been another application to this Citizens Revenue Task Force, or I don't know who. Commissioner Huxley, you asked for that to be out.
Yeah,
so.
I went through what was proposed this time. I went through what occurred in prior meetings, and I questioned, even on the press release, the press release on December of 2017 had in bold letters, the Board of Commissioners seeking board community representation, including small business owners. That was emphasized, especially those that are in the food service and or tourism related, and it went on retirees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There were no applications submitted. It was addressed in January 3rd of 2018 on the agenda item on the Revenue Task Force.
I think some were submitted as early as October.
Then it went on September 5th, and now we're at this meeting on October 3rd. Of course, it's been revised. But that's been removed. So basically, because there has been little interest over a year now, we're reducing it to anyone who wants to say anything on it, is going to partake. Now, are we going to have 6 members or 7 members? And what are we hoping to get out of this at this point? And is the goal, if the recommendation is to put something, this is the most important question I have, is at this point the objective that if this task force of 5 or 6 or 7 recommends that the county put 1 or more ballot measures before the public for increased taxes, that the board will do that. And I say that because I've always, for years, and still am of the opinion that you need a citizens initiative, not legally, but that's the way to gain the momentum and the support to put something like that before the voters. Are we going to do ultimately the same thing that we've done for the last 15 years?
What, you mean put things on the ballot and then they don't pass? Is that what
Put things on the ballot that 5 or 6, or just a board of 3 commissioners, or 4 or 5 or 6 people have recommended, and then whatever they recommend,
Quite frankly, I
before
think
the
the only
voters.
thing that could get on the ballot, and this is my own opinion, is something that all 3 commissioners support and are willing to get out there and advocate for. That's
in lieu
my
of a
opinion.
citizen initiative.
What?
In lieu of a citizen initiative.
It would be great to have a citizens referendum, but getting that to happen is kind of hard.
Okay.
Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, what you just said, I think, just helped in a positive way, move the process forward. I would disagree with you slightly in one area, that if we want to get it on the ballot, on the assumption we have a good plan before the voters, because we vote in favor of getting it to the ballot, doesn't mean we necessarily support the plan. We would have plenty of time, I think you would agree, to verbalize or communicate through town halls or whatever. But the option is to let the people decide in this case. Otherwise, it is so much easier for us to get it on the ballot board than to have it go through the citizens initiative, and I think that would take substantial more time. Anyway, I've talked enough on that, but I do agree, and I do see that as positive, what you just communicated there.
Council Huddle?
Thanks, Madam Chair. So looking at the AGRS and the order on this, the order has blanks. If you look on page 2 of this agenda item, it's got a list of applicants. The motion on the AGRS is suggested to move to approve applicants for Citizen Revenue Tax Force. But then the order has blanks in front as if there was going to be, I think, some indication, check marks or something, but my reading of both of these items together means it's to approve 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different people to the Citizen Revenue Task Force: Catherine Wiley, Roxanne Haynes, Emily Rumiano, Carl King, Bill Ostrowski, and Ron Crook. So that's my understanding of the motion, is to basically approve the slate. And so that would be the actual item for the board to talk about.
That was my understanding also. Administrator?
So to answer Commissioner Huxley's question, how many are there? I had JJ go back and review just like you did. There wasn't a definitive order that said exactly how many members. In JJ's research, he had said it would be a minimum of 5. The discussion was 5 to 7. There never was a definitive number. The reason we left the blank line, we had an individual who came in on the office on Thursday and wanted to apply, so we held that spot open, but he did not send the application in, to my knowledge. So that's why we left the spot open for that. My goal on this is I agree. I think the citizens need to have a citizens-led initiative, if not by referendum and signatures, at least have this group morph into a larger group of citizens that can help with the county issue. I think one of the most important issues that I would deal with helping out this committee is, one, what is the scope of the problem, and what is the need? So I think one of the things I would work with the department heads is saying, what are we lacking that would improve the quality of life for Curry County residents? Because obviously just getting money to get money is pointless. No one's going to support that. And so I think defining the problem and then defining the outcome is the first avenue of this group. And then after that, then say, how do you fill that need? And then decide where you're going to go with that.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Boyce?
I'll make a motion that we approve the 6 names as Council Huddle just identified there, and if I could amend that to leave it open for as many people who want to participate. I would send a note and a message out to the public today to encourage them. We're not expecting them to work miracles, but we, I think, need to offer gratitude that they're willing. These 6 people, 7 or 8, are willing to step in and tackle this, and there's some very qualified people. In fact, I can't think of any that aren't very qualified. So that's the message I would like. That's too long a motion, my apologies, but I'd move that we just approve this group and leave the application process open for additional applicants.
Let's discuss that just a little bit. Commissioner Huxley?
I don't think you should leave it open. Anybody that wants to participate has that opportunity to attend as members of the public. It's a public meeting.
And they could give input.
And open public input, correct.
Yeah. So Do you want to amend that motion just to approve the 6 that are here? Other people certainly can attend the meeting because it's a public meeting.
No, I don't want to amend it. I want to encourage official applicants to come in, and I want to, my preference, Madam Chair, would be to offer them credibility and appreciation by asking them to go through the process. And Mr. Huxley's recommendation, certainly the public would be available to participate, but we need a clear identification of who are the responsible people on that task force committee.
Well, and I think we've got that at this point. So,
Do we have a second?
do we have a second for his motion? Okay, hearing none, the motion fails. Do we have any other motions to approve the 6 people that are currently on the committee? I would make that motion, but I don't know whether I'll get a second. I would make the motion to approve the 6 people that applied in the time limit that was given.
I'll second it for discussion purposes, Chair.
Okay, discussion? Administrator Schroeder?
I don't think I would support and recommend that motion. The reason being, you could always, if an applicant comes forward, they could be considered at a future meeting. This is not a zero-sum game. So I think you could certainly...
Not set in stone.
Yes. So I don't think you're limiting the group if somebody has a sincere interest.
Well, and I think at this point we've got our applicants. Let's move forward. Commissioner
I
Huxley?
just had a question. Okay, just so we get it on the record here, I think the timeline is very... What was the
Is this
the
part of
end
another
date
motion?
in the... No, this is just...
Discussion.
This is discussion. Okay. For Administrator Schroeder, it was what, to recommend 5 meetings, or was that in one of the prior recommendations or the prior meetings? What's the end date that this is expected from a timeline that they expect to end the meetings?
I did not have a...
Okay, I guess that was in some prior discussions and prior documentation, so there is none. So, nor is there a limit on the number of meetings?
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Boyce?
Here we are almost 2 years later. Twice I've failed to get the board to come together, and I don't feel like we're really getting synchronized up here on this one either. So it's additional disappointment, it's additional delay, and we're even discussing if we have a revenue problem. That's the way I interpreted this dialogue the last little bit here. So just offering that as clarification. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor and a second.
Can we repeat the motion, please?
The motion is to approve the members that applied, the 6 members that applied for the Revenue Task Force.
I'll second.
Okay, I think there was already a second.
Excuse me.
We're ready to vote on this. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 After all that, everybody was, okay, good. Okay, second thing to bring out of the consent calendar was the order approving the SEIU agreement amendment, and that was item D4.
The only reason that I requested that be removed was because I will vote no on that, and I did not want to vote no on the 3 items that I voted to approve.
Any discussion on that item? Further discussion? So do we have a motion to approve the SEIU agreement amendment? Commissioner Boyce?
I'm just interested in, maybe it's been stated many times before, Commissioner Huxley's objections to this. I'd like to hear, after all the work's been done on this.
Well, actually, didn't we deliberate these in exec session, and so we just vote on this?
Yes. Commissioner Huxley?
No, I was going to say basically the same thing. We're not here to, again, pontificate on and on. We're here to run down the agenda motion, second, approve, or motion, second, and not approve these
Commissioner
items.
Huxley, if I may, that's an insult, because if somebody has an opinion, they're pontificating, and that just shocks me with...
Okay, so do we have a motion to
You-
approve the
goodness,
SEIU
goodness,
agreement
goodness.
amendment? If not, I'll make that motion, that we approve the SEIU agreement amendment. Do we have a second?
Second, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, do we have any further discussion? Okay, call for the question.
Aye.
Aye.
No?
Okay, moving on, intergovernmental agreement for Medicaid administrative claiming. Oops, I did the wrong one. Or did I? No. Okay, so that would be D5.
Correct.
Intergovernmental agreement for Medicaid administrative claiming, MAC.
My question on that, and I don't know, okay, someone's here that could answer that question. It was just for the amount. This is not renewal, but it's I guess updating an annual contract that Curry Community Health administers for Medicaid recipients. That's a fair, brief summation. What is the magnitude of the contract in dollars? I know on page 32 it gave a couple of scenarios for audits. One was if something is less than $750,000, you go down this path. If it's greater than $750,000, you go down that path. What has the amount been, or what was it approximately last year or the year before?
It is
Okay, so do you want to state your name so we have it on the record?
Yes.
Thanks, Ben.
Ben Cannon, Public Health Administrator. It is a reimbursement model, so it's not a contract that we get that money up front. We claim the money based on time of support staff in helping people, support them in enrolling in Medicaid or finding services or whatnot. So, and it's a minimal amount. We're talking several thousand to $10,000 a year. It's minimal amount that we claim.
Okay, so it does not track, or it tracks, but it does not include the actual amounts provided.
Correct.
Even though that's referred to in the contract,
Yeah,
or in this
it's
agreement.
up to those amounts. So in larger counties where they have a lot more staff, they're claiming a lot more time, and they get reimbursed for that
Okay,
time.
thank you. That was my question.
Okay, any other discussion on this item?
Did you win the $5,000 Saturday?
I didn't win. No.
Curry Community Health did a great job, and thanks for your contribution on that,
Thank you.
Mr. Cannon.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve 157344-0IGA intergovernmental agreement for Medicaid administrative claiming?
Chair, I would move to approve the motion as you read.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second, Madam Chair.
Call for the question.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Presentations, new hire presentation, Julie Swift. Is she around?
Yeah, Julie's not here, so, well, she's in the office, but if there's any questions, she can come in, but otherwise, if it's just, the information is presented in your packet, and it was just for approval.
Okay. So do we have a motion to approve the new hires that were presented in your packet?
This is,
Chair, I'd motion to, oh, I'm sorry.
my apologies. I thought this was just a presentation. Is this something we need to vote on?
I guess we don't need to vote on it. Sorry.
No, you're right.
It is good work, by the way.
Yeah, you're right. There is not a motion here to...
Okay, it was
approve.
just informational
It's just for
only.
information only, which is why
Okay.
we put it underneath the presentation, so.
Okay. Good enough. Next we
Good
have...
Good call on Commissioner Boyce.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Jeremy Dumeyer, and he's going to speak about Integrated Public Alert and Warning System.
Oh, no.
I won't give the acronym.
iPause?
Yeah.
Good morning, Jeremy Dumeyer, Curry County Emergency Services Coordinator. So when I came before the board last time, it was about the iPause and the WEO, the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System, and the Wireless Emergency Alert System. Originally, the wireless emergency alerts and the iPause were to be conducted as a test on the 20th of September. Unfortunately, there was a hurricane on the East Coast, so that emergency trumped a test. So today, while you guys are most likely still in session, your cell phones will probably go off. as the wireless emergency alert will be tested at 11:18 this morning. That test sounds much like an Amber Alert if you've ever received one of those. It's very loud, it will get your attention, and it's not to cause any sort of panic. It's just a test to see what the capacity is of the federal government to get a hold of the nationwide cell phone users that are able to receive these alerts.
So I have a question. If their cell phone's off, are we still going to get the noise?
If the cell phone is silent, you'll still get the noise.
Okay.
If it's on vibrate, you still get it.
We'll
so
get
those
ready
that have
for it.
cell phones in the room, it's going to be quite a cacophony of sound.
Okay.
So just an update on that. That I mentioned is at 11:18. That may be delayed due to bandwidth because again they are testing the nationwide wireless system. So might be a little bit delayed.
Excuse me, is that?
Yeah.
But is that Eastern time, Pacific
Our time.
Our time. Okay.
Correct.
So Big Brother knows where you are.
Not just at
Well.
11:18 though.
Well, just saying.
So that was the update on that. The other one I brought before the board is a notification of intent to participate in the Great Oregon Shakeout. On the 18th of October at 10:18 a.m., the Shakeout event will take place, and we have the opportunity to sign participation in this. Now we do that by going online to shakeout.org/Oregon and registering as a county that we intend to participate, that we're going to do the drop, cover, and hold drill, and that we might do some other things as well. Individuals and families can also do this. Businesses, they can go onto that website and sign up and get some great information about earthquake preparedness. Of course, we live in a very seismically active area.
So what's the website again?
It is shakeout.org/Oregon. Yes, shakeout is one word.
All small letters?
You can type it in all small, it works.
Okay.
They have it printed out differently. So again, that'll be at 10:18 a.m. on the 18th of this month. And that's a great opportunity for everyone to participate in the drop, cover, and hold. And then, of course, since we're on the coast, evacuate, evacuate, evacuate. Whether or not you actually do evacuate a building, as long as you talk about the plan, decide on the best options, and know what your evacuation routes will be, that is at least a start.
So do we have a plan for this, the county complex?
I believe Mr. Huddle actually knows quite a bit about that.
Thank you. Yes, and so our safety committee in coordination with the emergency management coordinator, we run a drill and we actually do an evacuation. And so what we have on the safety committee, we have 6 members. We are assigned different areas of the county campus, as it were, and each safety committee member has a clipboard. We actually time the evacuation, and we make sure after the folks have evacuated, we check to make sure nobody's in any, closed rooms or anything, and then we meet at the, what I'll call the old library parking lot. So we do have a route, we do practice it, we practice it once a year in coordination with the shakeout. So anyway, we that's what we do.
Okay, good to know. Commissioner Boyce?
Did we do it a year ago and it started raining? We were out there for 20 minutes.
We did it in the rain last year. Yep.
Unfortunately, disasters tend to happen in the worst of times. The other thing, too, I just want to bring to your attention, there's a couple of events coming up. So this Saturday from 1 to 4 at the library here in Gold Beach, there is a emergency preparedness fair that is being hosted by the Rotary. The next Saturday, the 13th.
Can you say what time that starts?
From 1 to 4.
Thank you.
And where is that?
The library here in Gold Beach.
Library, okay.
The next Saturday, the 13th, there's also an emergency preparedness fair in Brookings at the Calamity School. That is from 1 to 5, and that is being hosted by my department and Wild Rivers Connect.
Okay.
So it'd be great to see you there. The one in Brookings, I will say we have some pretty good speakers coming to. We have Lori Dangler, a professor from Humboldt State University in the Geologic Department, to talk about seismic instability in our region. We have representatives from NOAA, from the Medford office. Of course, I'll be there speaking as well.
And that's at Calmeopsis?
Correct. That's at the K School in the cafeteria.
Okay.
Yes.
Jeremy, if you want to send me that information, I can put it on the Maine County website. I know you probably have it on your tab, but I could put it either on community information or on the news itself.
Will do.
Thank you.
That'd be good. Okay. Commissioner Boyce?
The alert warning, did I understand correctly, that's where the president can just touch a button and everybody gets a text, and it has to do with the mess up in Hawaii, what, 6 months ago or whatever? That's kind of what...
Not necessarily. So yes, it's for the federal government to be able to communicate with the residents. We get those alerts, such as a tsunami alert, excuse me. Those tend to be localized. So of course, if there's a tsunami, distant tsunami coming at us from Alaska or Japan, a WEA alert would be sent to the West Coast areas that would be affected by that. There's never been a nationwide test of this system. And from what I've researched on this through FEMA's website, this is to test the bandwidth capabilities. If we had an all-nation event that endangered the citizenry, that they would be able to communicate that through the wireless alerts. So it's not for the president to necessarily be able to get out the vote, if you will.
Well said.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Let's see. Amendment to Public Service District Assistance Ordinance, Article 7, Division 1, adding road funds to lending source. Council Huddle.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and you have in your packet under this agenda item 10, you've got some materials. Trying to see if I can pull this up. Essentially, this is, I don't want to say the culmination, this is sort of, we're pretty close. This is the light at the end of the tunnel, perhaps, near the end of the process to develop a road fund loan policy, and this is actually an ordinance. And I was tasked with researching this, and I found that we had an existing ordinance already under our codified ordinances from, I think, 96, that had special district assistance. And on page, looks like 11 of your packet on this item, I have a PowerPoint, and I'd like to just start with the PowerPoint. My goal today is to give information to the board, not to have the board make any decision. But if the board has more questions, I'm probably looking for direction to bring this back for a first reading. This would be an ordinance amendment, and the first reading would be the next meeting, which is October 17. But starting on page 11, and again, so this is called an amendment to the Article 7, and it would add road fund loans to the Public Service District Assistance Ordinance that we already have. So we have an existing ordinance. It allows the county to lend funds to public service districts. Recently in 2017, HB 3435 allows county to lend road funds, and road funds are defined, and we'll get into that in a little bit, to taxing districts and other counties. So the prior ordinance, the existing ordinance, calls these things public service districts. The statute that was just adopted last year calls them taxing districts. So the proposed ordinance would amend, one of the first amendments would be to add the road funds to the lending source. So we already had a lending source for these loans, and then change public service district to taxing district. Those are two of the big pieces of the ordinance. And then under the existing ordinance, the county had never loaned any funds at all for 20 years. We had no application forms, we had no loan agreements, no record of payment, receipt and tracking, and no enforcement examples. So we were really, even though we had a document on the books for a long time, we had no real help. So I looked at some other sources in state law, and I found that there's a statute that the Oregon Military Department, which is also the Office of Emergency Management, I think, they can make local disaster loans. So I reached out to them and asked them for examples of their loan applications and their lending agreements, and the response I received from the Department of Administrative Services is that they had never given a loan under that statutory scheme either. So I still didn't have a lot of help, or we were sort of starting from scratch. We did have some resources. The resources then that... Sure.
Did you do this 21 pages?
Yeah.
You did all that work? That's amazing.
Well, I had some sources here, but anyway, so the board, thank you. The board has policy regarding fund management. We already have a policy regarding fund management, and there are four factors that you look at for fund management. This is our investment policy, and there's some supporting materials in here from I want to say a 2017 May presentation where our county treasurer also brought another treasurer with her, and maybe it was a investment pool people, and they presented the four things you look at when you're investing. Is the investment legal? Is it safe? And so here we have, some collateral requirements, a limit or cap on the funds to any borrower, a limit or cap on road funds to a district loan fund, and we'll talk about that. Is it liquidity? And so term of years, maybe make progress payments, in other words, hold some of the funds to ourselves and just dole it out when things are done. And then a non-appropriations clause, and that means that we would have an ability to not loan if it didn't get budgeted. There's some issues there with contracting obligations and things and bonding, but the next thing would be the yield, and they say the yield is the last thing you look at on these materials. That's the interest rate, and again, it just says the board has many options, and the board does, but the yield is the least of your focus. Legality, safety, liquidity are what these materials for investing say. And the reason we're bringing that up, even though this is a loan, there's some parallels to it being considered as an investment, because essentially we would be taking money out of the investment pool. It's an alternative to investing, alternative way to make a return on your money. So the existing ordinance, again, it said we can do a county service district and change it to a taxing district. This is consistent with the House bill, and it's codified at ORS 368-709. I looked into both the definition of county service district. We listed them in our ordinance. They also are called special districts in the statute, and I tried to find a definition of either of these terms, and they weren't very much defined. We had given examples to show what county service districts are. So what I proposed, and I couldn't really find a statutory definition of taxing district either, so we have created our definition of a taxing district, and it would be the ability to receive taxes on real property within the boundaries of the district. So and any district who's making an application would have to show that they have that ability to qualify for a loan. So then the last application process, and what I'm doing here, I'm starting with the PowerPoint that start on page 11, but then we'll go to the ordinance changes, and I've done the protocols to show cross-outs and underlines for deletions and additions. But the old application process was they would file with the county board, and there was no application fee. Again, besides just doing this kind of work, doing an application fee would to have staff time, and then our application process and decisional process had a posting of publication and notice in a newspaper and those kind of things, and that costs money for legal ads. So we're asking applicants to pay a fee to cover staff time and publication costs. And these are proposed. The board, and again, just looking for the board to think about it today, maybe come back with comments, and if the board wants a second workshop, we can go probably continue this matter to the 10th. I just want the board to efficiently use its time. This is a lot of information for the board to consider all at once. So then the application information. When I said we didn't have a lot to go on, there are some sources. The House bill said that the applicants would show their estimated tax income and then their estimated debt service. So those would be two factors. These factors were not included in the application that existed in the old ordinance, And so we added these, and then we added some other factors from other state lending examples. And those other lending examples are in the volume of materials that you received on this as well, from the Oregon Infrastructure Finance Authority, sometimes called BizOrg, and it looks like they use a outsource on some of their lending for projects. Some of those loans are to businesses, some of those loans are to nonprofits and other government entities. I borrowed from some of the factors on those. What other changes there would be? So we formalized a staff review and recommendation. We added this element. So the county administrator, county accountant, county treasurer, and county legal counsel would review the application for the criteria, and we'll get into some of those in the ordinance, which is earlier in the materials. Changes to the ordinance are we would give, there already was a notice of denial if people were denied in the prior ordinance. We added a time limit, so we'd give them a notice within X number of time, and then also that the notice would be by mail. It just said we would notify them. It left it open as to how to do that. So we basically, I'll say, tightened up the ordinance. We added a remedy section. We allow anyone who has not paid to have a 30-day opportunity to cure. And then one of the remedies, because the state law does say that the county shall loan by intergovernmental agreement with these taxing districts, and that the county will put in elements to make sure the county funds are secure. The idea here with the taxing districts is my understanding of the mechanism is that we receive the tax payments and then we distribute those out to the districts. I borrowed this concept that we could then, if a district owed us, back payments on a loan and we had some tax funds to give to them, we could, withhold those tax funds as, offset for the loans that they owed us.
Could I just insert something here?
Sure.
I think we would have to look at the amount of money that each taxing district is getting through taxes, and because I was looking at that the other day, and some of the districts are receiving very little.
Sure, I agree with you, and up on this with the application information, they would show us what their estimated tax revenues would be. Mm-hmm. That would help us figure out how much to loan. And then they would also have to show us what their estimated debt service is. I think with these two figures, it's kind of like an income and expense statement there to show mm-hmm. us what kind of money they would have left over to pay us. So yeah, I agree with you. And we would then calculate the loan and the payments to make sure we would at least be having them have an ability to pay. But sorry, Commissioner Boyce.
Oh, thank you. Just security was based on 20 years, so it was really solid through the bill, through 34, 35. That was part of the whole, the main guarantee of that security.
We'll talk about that. That's going to be one of the questions for the board to consider, the time limit on the loans. Then the other part we would consider is how much of our road funds, and road funds is defined as road funds from federal sources. That's right out of the statute. I believe the state law limits what you can do with road funds that are paid and sourced by state gas tax revenues. But we have, and I'll just use a word or an amount, roughly 27 million, I think, in the non-state road funds.
Could I just ask one question
Sure.
at this point? Because
mm-hmm.
that was one of my big concerns.
Mm-hmm.
Has the federal government okayed Oregon State to loan out their federal road funds?
I don't have any document to that effect.
I could think maybe the state would have that authority, but I don't think the state would have authority to say, hey, you can use your federal road funds for taxing districts. I don't know, but I'm just saying.
I would follow up with the representative and ask if legislative council gave an opinion on that, or that would have been something to cover at the state legislative process.
Commissioner Boyce?
Before the bill, as soon as the bill was get out of hearing, it wouldn't have got anywhere unless it got through legal counsel. So the state would be in a pretty secure position here to even get it to the committee, out of committee, and to the vote. So I don't think I understand your apprehension there, but I don't think that's an issue at all.
I think I'd want to be darn sure that that was the case before I moved on.
Well, I can ask
Right, the legal counsel.
I can ask the state representative for any legislative council opinion on that. But one of the alternatives would, again, there's what the old ordinance did was it set up a separate fund to loan out of. So the loans wouldn't be coming directly from the road fund or from any other particular fund, the general fund. And we'll get into the mechanism for how this fund is established, and it's established through the budget process. But one of the things, and maybe the board would direct in the ordinance, if there's a percentage of the road fund that it wanted to make available, or a dollar cap. In other words, what part of our road fund loans would we want to put in this mechanism for lending?
Or even a combination thereof.
Yeah. So then what stays the same? The statute allows us to lend to taxing districts within the county or even other counties. The prior ordinance only had us loaning to public service districts within the county, so I did not change from that. I didn't allow us to do the full scope of the statutory authority. This was trying to stay within the policy that previously this county had established. And then what also stays the same is a public hearing was required under the prior ordinance before a board would give a loan. And what we've done here is we've added clearer notification requirements. And then if you recall, there was the staff review of applications. That staff review would include then a written report with recommendations for publication and discussion at the public hearing. So what are the sources of this PowerPoint and the changes that I made in the code? The first start was we already have Article 7 in our code, which authorized us to loan to service districts. The 2017 House bill authorized county loans of road funds. Then investing in public funds, we had two documents. The Curry County Treasurer did a May 31, 2017 PowerPoint. It talked about these, you want to make sure your investing is legal, safe, liquid, and then the yield is the last thing you think about. And then we also have our own county investment policy, last updated March 31st, 2011. And it mirrors some of these other ideas. You obey the laws, you protect your funds, have a liquid investment, diverse risk, and then a rate. Some other sources continued. Again, the State Military Department, I looked at their local disaster loan program. The response I got was there was really no guidance available. So then I went into Infrastructure Finance Authority, small business loans, not-profit loans, and then the application examples give underwriting clues. And then somehow the PowerPoint was repeated in the materials. But now I'd like to walk you through then the ordinance itself and the changes and all. The protocols I used for the changes was a strikeout was eliminating language, and then the underline and italicized was the language that would change. So this is, again, Article 7 in our ordinance had all these things here. So this just says, you know, the old purpose was to allow the county to provide assistance to public service districts. We just changed that to taxing districts to comply with the new law, and through the lending of funds, thereby promoting. So we already allowed ourselves to loan funds to other folks in the county. And then what the purpose is, so I added, and to include allowed funds, federally sourced road funds as authorized by the House bill. So I specifically called out, added the purpose statement that the purpose of this ordinance was also to allow us to do that. And road funds is defined in the House bill as monies from federal sources in the county road fund. And for us, that's called something like our road capital improvement fund or something. And that's where the fund of $27 million is. And then again, we've just changed from public service district to taxing district. And then we gave a definition. And it's any governmental unit in Curry County that has the right to receive ad valorem real property taxes. So they have to be able to tax real property. And then the real property taxes are what we distribute out. And if you look, the old ordinance had a list of just districts: people utility district, water district, cemetery districts. This list looks very similar to the list of special districts under the statute. I didn't know what a public service district was or how we came to get these, but I'm assuming these all allow themselves to impose property taxes on the people within their jurisdiction, incorporated city, etc. So, but what we're doing is we're eliminating listing anyone. The elimination of the list means that we won't leave anyone out, and we won't include anyone who shouldn't, but they would have to prove in the application that they can do the taxing. So then all we did here was change a couple of words. We added Board of Commissioners, but the filing is with the county administrator. The application, what's their name? Here we've added, so what you see on these underlines and these italicized are concepts taken from BizOrg and the State of Oregon's Infrastructure Finance Authority lending applications, and the actual applications are in your materials. But essentially, we would, have who their key personnel is, and key personnel is a pretty standard thing that a lender wants to look at. What their management style is, financial, technical staff is applicable. So who is your organization? What's their qualifications? And then we have the specific reason of what the fund is. If it's a project, describe the project. How far along are you? Do you have development plans, architect plans, engineer drawings, cost estimates? If it's an asset, year, make, model, specifications, etc. How funds would be used in the interest of the public of Curry County. Question, will jobs be created, or what other economic stimulus would there be? What's the amount of operating taxes estimated? These are straight out of the statute. Other relevant applicant financial resources, are there matching grants or any other thing that they're going to get? Estimated annual debt service, again, right out of the statute. And then, again, how the funds will be repaid, including but not limited to the source of funds for repayment. And then we ask for basically financial records. These are things that you've heard of before: balance sheet, income statement, changes in financial position statement, audits, bond rating, letter of reference from financial institutions. Are you involved in any litigation, or is there litigation likely to be filed? That's usually listed in audit reports. And then other information that can be required when deemed applicable by County Administrator or Board of Commissioners. So we allow ourselves the flexibility to ask for information plus other relevant information. And then it talks about the application fee, what that's for, and then the review by the county. Essentially, this is a new creation, but it's the treasurer, administrator, county accountant, county counsel, and then the administrator would prepare a written staff report and publish a recommendation for the hearing. And then I just say, note, this is a question I have for you all. The board may want a dollar limit on how much it would loan to any particular borrower, or establish debt to equity ratio or debt to income ratio. You may want to establish that. You may want to wait until the team, comes up with that in a recommendation. So it's not required, but these are things, and that goes to the security element of the four factors.
When you say the team...
I'm sorry, the team I'm calling is the treasurer, the administrator, the county council. So
okay.
I don't know what you want to call that. It's a loose term. It's not an official term.
Well, I just wanted to make sure I knew who was making these recommendations.
Feel free to ask questions at any time. So then here it said, they file, the county administrator sets the date for the public hearing. It gives a date when it will be, and then the information on the application will be subject to public disclosure. Now, that's under public record law. It says subject to public disclosure, but there still may be some information under the public records law, if that has probably, I'm just going to say 100 off the top of my head, but it's got a slew of exceptions to what information is disclosable. And if someone's making an application, they could identify for us what information they don't want disclosed. But
can I go back for 1 second?
Sure.
On the $1,000?
Yep.
I think it's going to be important for us not to set an actual, I would say a minimum of that, because sometimes going through and evaluating these applications would be far more complicated. And
It certainly could be. So, you know, and it also is intended to handle postage. I think what we do on some cases is we say it's a minimum of this, and then they'll pay actual costs. Our public records law, I think, I'm just going to use a loose term here. I typically don't memorize things that are written down, but let's say we charge $40 per hour for staff time. Here we've already got 4 people, assuming it'll be a minimum of an hour apiece. You know, 4 times 40 is, you know, $160 there. This could be 4 times that, which is, let's just round it up to 200 and go to 800 right there. So let's say if it took the 4 people 4 hours, there's $800 roughly, and then another couple hundred for advertising. I would like to think that we could get, you know, an application processed in a 4-hour time frame.
Well, and I'm just thinking rates and so forth change. So if you put a minimum of $1,000, then that kind of covers it.
Yep, and then we would track our time and charge actual time.
Right.
We could change language. There's language like that exists in some other statutes and administrative rules. So
I just like to think that it's not totally set in stone. Those type of things.
So put in an actual cost with the time tracking.
Yeah, with a minimum of 1,000.
Good, and if it's less, we would refund. Okay, so thank you. Let's see here.
Okay, you can get back to.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Here we go. That's okay. So again, we've talked about these things. Then the notice of the hearing. This is just where we added where it would be, what the notice will be, and we can use other reasonable means of notice. We can post it. The hearing, and it says any, you know, this is language that hasn't changed at all. The hearing shall be held in an orderly manner, and then it says all interested persons being given an opportunity to be heard. So there's no what I would call standing requirement. A person will just have to show they're interested in this. And then we have within 30 days, we'll either A, deny it, B, grant it, or C, continue the hearing. And we give ourselves a limit of, you know, 60 days is when we're going to fish or cut bait on these things, and that should also help keep costs down. And then if it would not be in the public interest, we give them a denial not later than 30 days from the decision. And then if they're denied, they can't make another application in 6 months. That's the same there. And then if we grant it, we can grant it, and the loan agreement will be an intergovernmental agreement, but does not create any partnership, joint venture, or separate governmental entity. So by being a lender, we're not going to be a joint venture with them.
Question over here.
On the section 701-100, you had struck through denial of the application and just left it as the application, but everything, even the additions or the modifications to the text in those 2 paragraphs, has to do with denial only.
Yeah, good.
So I'm not sure.
Oh, this is a draft, so this is why we do this. So I think that should stay in there. So that's a good catch. So I appreciate all comments are welcome. Let me see here. Going to the loan terms. Again, this is where we get into, you know, we intend to responsibly manage the road funds available for lending under this ordinance by considering, you know, we mentioned the 4 factors: liquidity, security, rate of return. Well, 3 of them. Legality is the other one. Those considerations will be addressed by the terms of any given loan. Such terms may include but are not limited to. And again, we don't know why the loan would be asked for. You know, a loan for a project or like a real estate purchase or, you know, a construction project would be different than a loan for a fire truck or a piece of equipment. So again, it's that's why we use the terms include but aren't limited to. So interest rate. Now, again, this I believe is a choice for the board. These are for discussion purposes only. We're really going to look for direction from the board on rate, or what type of a mechanism do we want to have. And then some of these came from the other folks who are lending out there from the IFA. 3% above the annual interest of the road fund that it usually receives from its investment pool, at least 1% over comparable U.S. Treasuries with a minimum of 4%, and then 2%, I don't even know if that math works out there on that second one, and then 2% greater than the prevailing prime lending rate for Federal Reserve. And these last two came from IFA. The first one was just, what are we expecting to get out of here? The usual rule on lending out from any fund is that you have to replenish the fund. So what this would, and we would be able to give the 3% to the general fund, and then as long as we replenish the road fund of what it had and what it would have made if we left it in its investment pool.
Okay, on that first one, I think it ought to be 4% above the annual interest of the road that the road fund receives from its investment pool, and with a minimum of 5%. Louise?
Louise Kallstrom, County Accountant. The investment pool rate changes quarterly. And when I was first involved with the local government investment pool, rate was somewhere around 6 or 7% interest rate.
It's like 1 something.
And then I, of course, I don't remember how many years ago it was, it dropped as low as a percentage of 1%. So it's actually been steadily going up since that bottomed out
the Federal
rate.
Reserve is raising.
But if you're talking about a 5-year period of a loan, and you loan it at, say it's at 2%, and you loan at 5%, and it gains interest, the investment pool interest rate becomes like 4%. You're only actually lending 1% over what you could have got for that money in the local investment pool.
So question, would you recommend that we just disregard that one?
I'm not sure, because when you lend, I'm assuming that we're lending on a fixed rate.
No. All those I think represent variable rates.
Okay, so we could change the rate quarterly.
Right. I mean, that's a.
So all these are variable.
Yeah, that's a pretty.
Okay.
Okay, because that
makes me
was
feel
my
better.
question, because I did not know if when you do loan, if you're loaning at a fixed rate, or if it's going to follow that investment pool
Yeah,
rate.
the only reason I say that is because we are not a bank, and we cannot afford the risk of doing fixed rate.
And then again, I just wanted to let you guys know, I am not a banker, and that means that managing a loan with a variable rate would be a lot of fun for me. So
That's true.
Just
That could
saying.
be kind of crazy. Commissioner Boyce?
Well, that made me feel better. The whole idea behind the concept of this bill, the legislature did it, passed it almost unanimously, with 3 counties that have.
You don't have your mic on.
Forgive my departure there. I caught Brett Thompson. He had to go to work, so I can explain. He's fine. The whole idea was to make, if our taxing districts need help, and I just don't think we're qualified to decide these percentage rates. I think we need help on that. Your point is very good about the Federal Reserve raising rates, and so when you talk about a variable rate, I just, the days I had to borrow money, I had to get the best interest I could to manage that and try and really get a good return. And so that's our responsibility here through House Bill 3435, is to try and be available, not a bad loan, but something that is going to be easier for them to obtain help than not retaining help. That's all. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any comments about interest rates here?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I was just contemplating going back for 1 second to the loan team. I think one of the things in the evaluation, you could formalize it in the ordinance, or you could just leave it up to the team to decide. I think consultation with the roadmaster should be part of that discussion in order to evaluate capital needs and budgeting for a 5 to 10 year period to make sure that we're not dipping into the pot that things are going to be spent.
That makes total sense to me.
If I could just speak to that, so again, the team would not be looking at a loan application until a pool of funding is made, and the pool of funding, I think Administrator Schroeder, the concern you have is determining on an annual basis during the budget cycle how much of the road fund goes in there, and I think that would be a natural consequence of the budget committee deciding how many funds go into here. Would be the road master giving a presentation of what's available for this kind of activity. So I think what you're talking about is one step ahead of getting, so that would happen just at a different spot.
Okay.
Okay. Just as long as they have input.
Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Boyce?
Yeah, thank you again. Just when it comes to variable rates, I mean, historically, the first thing you do is you go back to late 70s, and so this could put them out of business if it was a variable rate, and they're trying to, no anticipation of that. And it could happen again, per your point.
Of course, you also have to look at the risk to us, and that's what we have to be concerned with.
So it stays in the road fund reserves, and never mind. Thank you.
So what I'm hearing, it sounds like, what the first option would be, and it seems to make the most sense in our circumstance, is that, we know what our investment pool return is, and it would be easy for us to track, keeping it 3% above that. So, and I heard Commissioner Gold say 4% above that with a minimum of 5, and that's something we could certainly put in there. And so, and speaking to Commissioner Boyce's thought on, we don't want to make it overly hard on folks, my hunch would be, Commissioner Boyce, is that the entities that are coming to us for these kind of loans already have financing, or their options would result in interest rates significantly higher of this anyway. Because what I understood the policy behind this was, the market for money out there is way up here, the local government return on their required investments is way down here. If we can get here and they can get there, it's a win-win.
Big wins.
So,
Yes,
so I think even what's proposed up here would still be a benefit to those districts. I don't pretend to know all their financial circumstances, but from what I've heard, let's say at today's market, this would, Commissioner Gold, minimum 5%. My hunch would be their options are far higher than 5% on some of the loans they're asking for. But
they wouldn't get a loan for less than probably 10 if their financial stability is not very good. And why would they come to us if their financial stability was good? Commissioner Huxley?
I wouldn't get too bogged down on the interest rates.
Thanks.
And on those, as far as the investment pool of the county, I mean, it's gone in the last 4 years from about 0.54%. Now that's annual. Divide that by 12. Okay. For
So nothing.
To, I think it's up maybe about close to 2 now, but for years it was about 0.5 to 0.6 or 0.7, and those are change every month, and they always have, they always will. They might remain the same, but they're subject to change every month.
Right, and we would adjust ours probably
And that's
quarterly
just
or
the
annually.
wait times,
Like
they're subject to change monthly.
So if I'm hearing from the board, the consensus would be to come up with an interest rate based on the first of those options versus the other two, and that's kind of, because this will come back to you one more time at least, so that's helpful. And then the next one is, how long do we want it to go? And these time limits are for discussion, and we're looking for board direction. So 5 years is just something to think about. The ORS commonly, the investment pool commonly limits us to 18-month liquidity, and typically their maxes are not more than 3 years. So if you're going to invest your funds, they want you to have it liquid, very liquid. And then the House bill allows a 20-year loan term, meaning our money would be committed for 20 years and we'd get it back, you know, at that amount. So
I think that's taking too big a risk myself. Commissioner Huxley?
Well, and on the 18, you know, you've referenced Chapter 294, but it's 294-135 for the 18, and they do that for a reason, because it's public money, and the laws for decades and decades have said you will invest it, you know, securely. It will be extremely secure.
Well, but also
or you won't
Right.
liquidity. You won't invest it. And
Right.
With the comments that have been made in budget committee meetings not just budget committee meetings, but other commission meetings also over the years, especially more recent years, the rate now that the road fund or the road department for the last 2 years has gone into major percent of their revenue now is from their reserves. It's not from continued incoming federal tax, you know, title, whatever the title may be. So that is dwindling much quicker than it was, and the reference has been made, you know, if this continues at this rate, just with the road department only, and possibly public of that what-if scenario, because if you're locked in to anything longer than a few years, and it does dwindle down the way it's forecasted, there won't be any funds for the
Yeah, and I think it's important to note
use.
if there were an emergency, which there could very well be, a seismic
And
event
then,
or whatever,
you know,
then
County Council hasn't got to it yet, but further on in his draft, he references how to determine what the maximum amount of, from a percent or a dollar amount of road funds would be in that fund that
Yeah.
would be
Sure.
available for
Yep.
loan.
So it sounds like the board is looking for a shorter duration than a longer duration under the liquidity idea on the term of years. I think what I'll do is when I come back, we'll just leave this blank, and the board would deliberate and pick a number. But it's something to think about for sure.
Clarification.
Yes, yes.
The bill is for 20 years, and you believe that the board, or sense that the board wants a shorter term than 5 years?
From what I'm hearing,
Thank you.
from your 2 or your 3, the bill allows up to 20 years. It doesn't require 20 years. It just gives you flexibility.
If I may, Madam Chair, then nobody's going to borrow money, and you know, regardless of how serious the need might be, my hunch or my concern is nobody's going to come to the county and say we'll do it for 3 or 4 years. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's all.
okay. Commissioner Huxley?
Of course, my phone is muted, so there's nothing, but there was something that just came up, this CMOS alert.
Oh, okay, so it
Presidential
actually
alert just did
worked.
come up.
Everybody else's phones work?
I think I heard a few of those.
So,
Okay.
So then
Silent stuff. Big brother
collateral
knows you.
is interesting here. There's a lot of different ways to, and this goes to security. The loan would not exceed 40%. If there was a project or real property, a lot of times you can get a loan to value ratio of 80%. Just picked 40% here. So they would need to have certainly other sources of funds. And then the borrower's equity must at least be 20%. So of all the borrowing they do, they would have to have at least 20% equity where they put in out of their own pocket.
Another game.
So that's right. So those are 2 ways to have security. These numbers are up to the board to decide. And then the borrower would maintain insurance on any project or capital. And then project related, they'd abide by all laws. These are just standard loan terms actually, and contract terms. Not allow any liens. They have certificates of satisfactory completions, allow inspections and audits. These are pretty standard terms. This is one where if it was a loan for a project, we would disperse the the funds on progress payment, where we actually held the money until things were done. That would also be another way to collateralize or secure the loan, and that goes back to those 4 factors of safety. And then default, if a payment's delinquent more than 10 days, it's past due. And this is, again, the county could withhold tax disbursements. Now, the interesting part there is I think we only get those tax disbursements annually. So if they...
No, actually, they could spread it out 4 times a year, I believe.
Okay, I don't know.
If they don't want to get the 3%. Is it 3 or
No. Yeah,
when you pay it?
Yeah.
Okay. But they don't disperse it until it's paid. The county doesn't, right?
Well, I'm assuming that we get the majority of our tax revenues
In
that
November.
would go to any district at one time.
Louise Callstone, county accountant. So our tax revenues come in fairly soon after tax statements go out. So you get a few in October, you get a lot in November when it's due. It's due 3 times a year, but it actually comes in on a monthly basis.
Okay.
And the county's required to send those out, disperse them out to the taxing districts on a monthly basis, except for in November and possibly December, where they're sent on a weekly basis.
So,
Okay. Well, this could still work then. I was concerned that, in other words, the idea is they're late 10 days on a payment 1 month, and if we weren't getting the tax revenue to withhold except once a year, they could technically be late. So this is actually a more viable.
so doesn't the majority of the tax fund come, or taxing districts, they get the majority of their money in November, is that correct?
Majority in November, and but you get it trickling through December.
Right.
So usually taxing districts will receive a weekly distribution of property taxes in November, and I think in December too.
Yeah, but we're talking piddly amounts after November.
You still get
If most people want that 3% discount.
you still get it depends on what size of a district you are, how much money you get, and then the third you could pay another third in, I think it's like March or April or something. So that one, the revenue goes up a little bit to a taxing district in that month.
But I guess my point
they will get
is
some dollar amount.
the majority
usually
goes out
every
in
single
November.
month. But the majority does go out in November.
Okay.
And again, this is a concept that I borrowed from the state. My understanding is if you owe money to the state, they could withhold, a tax refund that you would be due or something like that.
Yeah, they're good
So-
at that.
So again, this is just a concept. The general concept is called offset. Treasurer Debbie Crumley's here. She may have something to add.
She can give us some wisdom.
About
Come on up, Debbie.
how often and what it's like to receive the monies and when they go out.
I'm Debbie Crumley, Curry County Treasurer. I was listening to you talk in my office, and I thought I'd better clarify. So the taxes are paid by November 15th, and the majority of the money does come in. And I do pay the districts weekly, the month of November, only November, and then within the first 10 days of each month thereafter.
So the idea would be if we had a loan of our road funds to a taxing district and they were late on some payments, we could then, out of your disbursement, say, you owe us this money, so we're holding this for ourselves and using it to pay your loan. So that would be kind of the idea. And all of these would be by agreement, so they would have to agree to that.
So we would hope that their payments are, or the tax that we collect is more than their payments, or at least as much.
Well, and that would go to...
And that's kind of iffy, because that depends on whether people are paying their tax in November, right?
Right, and they can pay November 15th a third, February 15th another third, and May 15th the final third.
I don't know whether you know this question or not, but what percentage of the people pay their entire tax in November?
About 93%.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. Commissioner Boyce?
Council Huddle, they have to support the agreement. They can't get the money outside of the requirements under House Bill 3435.
Say that one more time?
They have to accept the agreement because they're borrowing it under House Bill 3435.
Yeah.
And that's a whole security agreement is very well spelled out there.
Okay.
I don't know how much, you've done some incredible work here, I have to say, but I don't know if we even need to spend any more time on this, frankly. Today,
We're getting very close to the end.
I just don't think we're going to get any takers.
No. Well, the funny part
Thanks,
is,
Debbie.
Commissioner Boyce, we've had a ordinance on our books for 20 years that allowed us to loan out our funds, and we never had any takers before then either. So
Thank you. Okay.
And then when I asked the state if they ever did any of their lending from the OEM, they said no, they hadn't had any takers either. So I think there's ordinances and these things that allow these loans, but I think they're pretty rare occurrence. And again, but ours hasn't been looked at in 20 years, and I've tried to basically update it to include some standards. So really, then the question would be, what about the payments? Is it once a month, quarterly? I think a once a month makes the most sense, and that they commence a month after the agreement started. County remedies for default, again, we could revoke the loan agreement, we could require repayment of unexpended funds, withhold further distribution, offset tax distribution, bar them from future loans, and then any other remedy allowed at law. But we also give them a 30-day notice prior to cure the default. And then this is the part that when Clark Schroeder was saying we should have the roadmaster talk about it. So this is how the county was to create a fund for the purpose of implementing the ordinance, and it would consist of monies appropriated by the Budget Committee at a regular annual session, and the county commissioners at any supplemental, and the monies to be repaid to the county by the taxing districts would all go into this fund. The amount of monies in the fund shall determine the amount of assistance available. And then it says, in no event shall the taxing district assistance fund contain more than, and I just said number percent of the road fund described here. And this is where I think, I don't even know if we need this, or if this is just a number that would be decided by, the Budget Committee and the Board of Commissioners during the budget process. And we're looking for, board direction on this. Right now, we've got the numbers 27 million. I hear that is decreasing every day or month, so I don't really know if we want to peg a percent or if we do. But really, these are some of the big policy questions. I've got, I think, some good feedback on the interest rate. You're looking for a number above our existing and the return that we get in our existing investment to be a flexible or adjustable rate. Term of years. Commissioner Boyce, I've heard you saying let's give ourselves the option of doing all 20. I've heard Commissioner Golden Huxley say something shorter. I'll probably leave that blank, but at least keep that down. The board wonder if you want to try to peg a percent now, or just leave this up to the deliberations through the process and come up with something later. But again, these would be the kind of mechanisms you can use to keep your assets to have them be secure. So really, that's the only presentation I had. I appreciate the good feedback I've had. My goal would be to bring this back to the board to consider adoption, and I just didn't want to spring all this information on the board when it would have to decide to vote on it right away. So I'm open for questions.
Well, I'm just going to make a comment on the percent of the road funds that could be. I'm kind of not really agreeing with that. I think maybe each year the Budget Committee, along with the road master, should look at the amount that is available, not do it by a percent. Commissioner Huxley?
I would agree. I think it should be a percent, because it would change the amount up or down depending upon the revenue, positive or negative back into the road fund.
Well,
rather than that's more a subjective or objective approach versus very subjective. So that's what I would suggest.
A percent by the board in the ordinance would also limit the flexibility the Budget Committee had to come up with a figure. In other words, it would cap even what they could do. So, but so what percent would you suggest? Well, I don't know. Let's say, for instance, now we're at 27 million. If you picked 1%, that would allow, 270,000, and 10% would be 2.7 million. I don't know. I'm not I'm not a math guy, but
Commissioner Huxley?
I would say in the 5 to 10%, 10% being max of whatever the funds were, because if they only had $1 million, you don't want to keep it a fixed amount if you've set
Yeah, that's
2.7 million. Let the percent vary. I'd say 5 to 10, 10 max percent.
Well, if you put in there 5 to 10, then the budget committee would have the option of
Well, I'm just
deciding
saying
within
my
that range.
opinion would be in that range, but I would think that the board would still want to decide on a fixed range from that, but just as an order of magnitude, that would be my opinion only.
Commissioner Boyce?
Yeah, so you talk 5 or 10%. I mean, that's, you just heard Council Huddle say that in the last 20 years, there hasn't been any interest or, so I mean, why are we spending this time? I think we're going to make it so restrictive. I've communicated this in past meetings. The whole concept is to help taxing districts that might be struggling, certainly not to make a high-risk, bad loan. I just think that cooler heads will ultimately prevail here. And yeah, if we're going to make it, interest rates that are, substantially more, then I think we just need to move on to the next agenda item.
I'm going to
But thank you for the good work. I'm going
to respectfully disagree with you. I think this is a very important issue. We are in charge of the public funds here, and we need to do it judiciously. So I don't think it's a waste of time. How about you, Commissioner Huxley?
Oh, no, absolutely. This is not a waste of time.
could I ask a question of the board? I'm done with my presentation. I think the board has got a really good grasp on what's happening here. I've got some feedback. Does the board think they need to have this at a workshop next week, or would you just like me to bring back an ordinance for consideration to adopt on the 17th? And it would be a first reading. There'd probably be a second reading at some other time. So.
Well, I don't know about others, but I went through this pretty carefully and studied it, and I'm okay with what we've come up with.
Okay.
I don't know whether we need a workshop.
I am also.
Okay, well,
Okay.
I'll just bring something back on the 17th then with some of the changes. It'll have some numbers for you to peg, so just put your thinking cap on, and we'll just talk about the numbers at the next meeting then.
Commissioner Boyce?
Just, can I request to maybe table it till December and see if we really need to justify additional time, maybe before then?
I think this is a really important issue, and I would prefer not tabling it till December. I don't know about you, Commissioner Huxley?
This has been ongoing for a year, over a year.
And we are being accused of doing nothing. I think this is something. So,
Who's accused you of doing nothing?
you on a number of occasions.
Oh, no, can I clarify that, doing nothing?
You say we have accomplished
That's totally
nothing.
invalid, and if that's the interpretation you had, I'll apologize right now.
Okay.
But Mr. Huxley's point of it's been a year, what have we accomplished other than serious staff time here through the council's office? And I'm trying to help you understand, nobody's going to come to us and ask for help based on everything that we've discussed here today and in, unfortunately, previous meetings. So
Commissioner
I'm
Huxley?
going to let it go.
Have consensus for direction to bring it back at the next general meeting, I think.
Okay, so we do have consensus to bring this back as an ordinance at the next general meeting.
Sure, and then I did hear from our treasurer that other counties have asked if anyone has a policy or a ordinance on their books or any agreements and things. So the law allowed not just us, but I think at least 2 other counties to do these kind of loans, and they've asked if we have got anything put together yet. So
And they're wanting to do it also?
they're just looking for guidance in what's happening out there. So really, that's
Okay.
kind of,
Is that Yamhill and Klamath County by
I
chance?
think it is. Yeah.
Thank you.
Louise Kallstrom has something to...
Louise Kallstrom, County Accountant. I just want to kind of make that last discussion a little bit clearer because
Thank you.
it said that the budget committee sets the dollar amount and they're not going by a percentage. But that percentage that council was talking about was a no more than percentage. So to have a variation like 5 to 10% would be hard to apply.
It would be better to say no more than 10?
It would be $1 a percentage rate that you are going for here. So when you're in the budget committee, if they're asking to put in 5%, that's fine. But they can't say, let's put in 11% because you have a cap of 10.
Okay.
And
Does that make it a little
my
clearer?
understanding
Yeah,
as
it
well
does.
is Budget Committee is a recommending authority, so ultimately the budget be approved by the board.
That's true.
And just
Commissioner Huxley?
my suggestion as a percent order of magnitude was not to go with a low or the high, but it was saying, my opinion, it would be somewhere in
Yeah.
that spread.
But
as a
the
fixed
number, the percentage that
percent.
county council is looking for is a no more than or a maximum.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and to have, that shouldn't be a range.
correct.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thanks, Louise.
Council Huddle and Accountant Colstrom.
Okay, I think we finished this discussion.
Just one side note,
Sure.
please. We have Samuel Ball in the audience, and he's been here for an hour and a half. Did you want to visit or have any kind of report? We really appreciate you being here. I didn't think you did, but I wasn't sure. It's great to have you here.
No, I didn't have anything. I was just following up. I was actually very interested in this last discussion. If I can put my 2 cents worth in, I've actually had a project up in Langlois that has recently asked if there was any road funds available for a housing project that they were working on, and I said, no, there isn't. And so this is an interesting conversation.
Is that a taxing district?
It was not a taxing district, but they were wanting to borrow some money from a taxing district, which could have borrowed it from you guys.
Would be the water district up there? Hard to say. 'Cause
It's hard to say, but
it might be the only route.
it was a quick conversation I was having with somebody, and I said no, that those aren't available to my
Commissioner
knowledge.
Huxley?
Just looking at county council, now, I don't think that this concept authorizes a tax district to then go loan the money to a non-tax district. It doesn't allow them to loan the money to another party.
I don't know that it does or doesn't, but what we would expect is if that was the intent, they would put that in their application, and we would use that information, and we may require then, well, how good is that borrower? So it would add another layer of things to processing, I think. But I don't think there's an absolute prohibition on what Mr. Baugh is talking about, but it would certainly make it more complicated for a lender to qualify, I think. So,
But thanks for
I
trying.
agree.
yeah.
Thanks for trying to help Langlois and find possible options.
Thanks, Sam. Okay, back to our regular agenda. We need to appoint a BOPTA, Board of Property Tax Appeal members to begin with.
So we have an additional application that came in late after the fact from Brent Thompson, and you should have that
Right.
in your possession. In addition, there was already an application from David Griffin, and these two individuals have been in the BOCTA before. And we would just do the corrected order, which would list both these individuals on there. And we have that corrected order, correct, JJ?
I don't have it put together yet.
He's working on it.
Okay, all right.
For two?
Well, yeah, so just two individuals have applied. You have to have a minimum of two, and then in addition, the second part of the issue would be we need a commissioner. Since Commissioner Huxley is leaving the commissioner's office, we would need to have either Boyce or Gold be on the committee.
And I'm very interested in doing that, should the board support me on that.
And actually, I'd be happy to do that also, since I'm into taxes. Love to pay them.
Got to get out more.
What was that?
You got to get out more.
I want to add something about Mr. Thompson. He stayed here till 11, and it's a reminder to us that it's nice when we have people in the audience that might be waiting to speak. I'm as guilty too, but I think we overlooked that. He left, said he had to go to work. He's fine, as I mentioned, but just for future reference, I think that's something we really need to try and be very
So one of the issues on here, and Jim Colin had just sent an email to us. He had a suggestion when we're looking at ORS 309.020 subsection 2.
And that's in your materials on this item, on page 4 of this item.
Yes. And he was basically suggesting maybe if the board is interested, we could get other counties interested.
The Association of Oregon County should take
Yep,
that lead.
to basically go, let's say, make it a 3 or 4 year term.
Yes.
So basically have a little more consistency. As you're well aware, there's training involved with this, there's education involved with this, and it might be a more stable review for counties to do that. If the board is interested in that, we could certainly start investigating that.
The AOC would take it to the legislature, and I think it's got some real good merit. So
Okay.
I'll make a motion that I be appointed for the Board of Property Tax Appeals.
I think we're talking about the 2 members first. Brent Griffith.
Yeah.
I get it backwards?
Yeah.
Okay.
Their motion number 1, move to appoint pool candidates David Griffin and Brent Thompson to the Board of Property Tax Appeals.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Do I have a second?
I would second for discussion.
Okay, discussion?
And on that, of course, when I saw this, I called Brent yesterday, and I mentioned to you, as far as the notice, just for future on any of these committees. There are so many, there are committees of committees of committees, and we look at the website, and nobody knows what they all are, but it's to have trickler files so that we know when
They have
something's
to be.
expiring, so we can get notice out there. Brent has, I don't know how many years he's been on. David Griffith has been on for many, but I think many years, and he's by far the most qualified. That's his business. He's an appraiser. So, just a suggestion on the duration, because Brent had brought that up. At least 2 years, or if not 2, 4, because what you're required to do, if you're a new or not, okay, if you're new or if you're renewing, but I think I've been on now for 4 years, but the first year you're required to take various online tests, and they're very educational. They're not just easy tests either. Very educational. And then if you pass, you're required to go to an all-day seminar training session in wherever. The first time I went, it was up around, not Salem, but Springfield, I think. The second time it was over in Grants Pass. Every 2 years. So it makes no sense for you to be appointed and then to appoint someone else the next year, because you passed a test that lets you serve for 2 years. And we were all for whatever, the way it was synchronized, it just happened that all 3 of us were on the same schedule. So we could all go at to the same meeting and know that we were all good to go for 2 years as far as the testing requirements. But that's, you wouldn't want to make it for a 3-year period or
Well, 2 years
whatever
sounds
for his
good.
recommendation because of that testing. So
That makes sense.
Okay, we'll work with the AOC on that, and I'll contact other county administrators also.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor to appoint Brent Thompson and Dave Griffith to the BOPTA, Property of Tax Appeals Committee. So
correct.
We had discussion. Let's call for the question.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next, we need a
Need a
member
motion
of
to
the...
appoint, motion to appoint either Commissioner Gold or Commissioner Boyce to the Board of Property Tax Appeals.
And I'll make a motion that the board appoint me for BOPTA.
Do we have a second?
I have a question, if I
Sure.
may. So did I understand it correctly that both of you wanted to...
I'm willing to
that.
do that, yes. And I know Commissioner Boyce has this great big list of things he's already doing, so I'm willing to step up to the plate.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So is there a second to appoint Commissioner Boyce to the BOPTA committee? Hearing none, the motion fails.
Okay. I would make a motion for the reason of your comments, to appoint Commission Chair Gold to serve on the Board of Property Tax Appeals as the Commissioner representative.
Do I hear a second? I'll second that. Discussion. Call for the question.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, next, department head meeting schedule. Administrator Schroeder.
So I bring this up. The administrator has a department head or manager meeting up to twice a month if there's material to cover, obviously. It's not set in stone. And we basically disseminate, gather information relevant to the departments within the county. It's not a public meeting. There was an adopted schedule that I inherited. I don't know if that was appointed by the board or if an interim administrator put that together, but there was a schedule I was following. Commissioner Boyce stated that he felt that he needs to be to all the meetings, and I guess at this point, in order to avoid an open meeting violation, we should seek either a board consensus on how these meetings will be scheduled for commissioners to attend. I have 4 possible motions for you.
Do you have a fourth one?
Yes, I just got one today as I was thinking.
Okay.
Move to eliminate commissioners attending department head meetings. 2, move to assign Commissioner Boyce as a county board attendee for all department head meetings. 3, move to retain current commissioner schedule regarding the attending department head meetings. And number 4, move to delete the schedule and let commissioners talk to each other and decide who wants to go. There's no, the concept that commissioners can't talk to each other about schedules is arcane.
I can even think of a 5th. How about this? We just rotate on a monthly basis, because I recall that one of the complaints was that the commissioners went 2 months in a row. But I do think all the commissioners need to be involved, and we don't want to be disobeying public meeting laws. So that's my thought.
Can we have this discussion now, Madam Chair?
Sure.
Thank you. Council Huddle, do you still believe that by having 2 or 3 commissioners available, as long as they're not in any way discussing policy or proposed policy, that it would be illegal?
Not illegal. A quorum of commissioners, two board of commissioners constitutes a meeting. Two out of 3 constitutes a public meeting when they're gathering information on county business.
Thank you. Is the public open to the department leader meetings?
No.
No.
Should it be?
In the past, it hasn't been. In my experience, we've never had department head meetings open for public. It's more in internal discussions.
Yeah, have you thought about that? I mean, I'm not putting you on the spot here. I just wonder if you have a personal opinion on why that may or may not be a good idea.
If
Council
I
Huddle?
could. There's an exception from the public records law of communications to allow frank discussion. And so, again, I think there's some policies just to allow frank discussion of issues is really the main reason. But also, if they are public, then you have minutes, notice, all the other costs and time involved. So, 1, they're not required by law to be public meetings, and 2, if they become public meetings, they're expensive, and 3, they may, hamper frank discussion of items. So that's really, and then some of the things we talk about in there are not for public discussion, whether it's claims or, any personnel stuff or health or anything like that. So,
well, that in itself gives me really a lack of confidence that if I'm prohibited from going to any of the meetings by a 2-to-1 vote, obviously, as I've stated, that doesn't sit well with me, and I will offer you that if you just look closely at Douglas County, Coos County, Jackson, Josephine, they're quite often together, 2 or 3.
How many commissioners do they have?
All 3 of them, coincident, including Lake County, all have 3 commissioners, and none of them have county administrators except for Jackson County, which that's not really, that's beside the point. But I'll just give you one example here. This is in Coquille. I'm on my way to the AOCC board meeting. Need a special click here. This was Sheriff Zaney. We went to the Vietnam. This was an unbelievable opportunity. This is the wall, the Vietnam Veterans Wall, where I spoke with the other 3 Coos County commissioners. It was just an incredible opportunity, building my relationship with them and representing Curry County. And all 3 of them spoke. All 3 of them talked.
Was that a department meeting?
No, it's they're honoring the veterans.
Okay, but what I'm
Here's my
saying,
point,
we're
ma'am, and I'll
on department meetings here.
Here's my point. Of all the times I've been around them and seen them at meetings together, they are on their honor. They wouldn't even remotely consider doing something improper or talking about policy with 2 or 3. So my point is this: they were all at this meeting, this honoring of the veterans, and there's nobody pointed a finger and said this is an open public meeting law. So as it pertains to the department head meetings, we all 3 need to have the option and the freedom to go and come and learn all we can. And any notion that we're going to somehow set policy or be sneaky, I really reject. So there you have it.
Commissioner Huxley?
An example of where you may have multiple members of the governing body show up. Okay. Senator, I believe it was Senator Wyden or Senator Merkley, one or the other, a year or 2 back, had a meeting or a public
Town hall.
Town hall, thank you, at the college, just north of Brookings, and that was explained there that all 3 commissioners could come. They were there to go to listen to their elected representative. It was not a county business meeting. They were there to go to listen to an elected representative. They were not going to carry on, they were there to listen. They were not going to carry on conversations about specific county business or decisions that they may be, or subjects that they may have upcoming that they were going to discuss and make decisions on. A veterans memorial probably was not called for, by their governing bodies to have that meeting. There was a meeting. My guess is that was called or set up on the veterans services or something like that. So we're talking apples and pumpkins or something.
I don't think anybody here would be rejected for going to the meetings. If we're doing it on a schedule, everybody would have a chance to go. If we set it up on a monthly basis, then you'd get to go every 3 months.
So you personally are going to prohibit me from going at random to meetings, and I'm going to challenge that all the way. And I will be at those meetings. It's up to you to file another lawsuit against me if that's the route you want to go.
Commissioner Huxley?
Well, there was nothing short of, I don't have the proper words to title this email communication from Commissioner Boyce, and two points here. It was sent to department heads and elected officials, but for the record, elected officials includes a sub-email category that is all 3 commissioners. So that years ago was deleted. Somehow it's back. But even this should not be going to all 3 commissioners, his communications, because he clicks on elected officials. There's a subcategory in there that needs to be removed. Again, it was removed some years ago. But let me please. It says, "Good day, all." It has to do with the department head schedule. This schedule, I believe, this is back on August 28th. This schedule, I believe, was set up before Administrator Schroeder arrived, and it is one that I've simply not had the time to review or work in properly amending. Period. My last meeting was June 26th, and you have to refer back to to the 2 pages of meeting schedules for 2018 to see that on June 26th it was Commissioner Boyce. On June 12th it was also Commissioner Boyce. So he had the 2 meetings in the month of June. The next month, July, was 2 meetings for Gold. The next month, 2 meetings for Huxley. The next month, 2 meetings for Boyce again, and so forth. But anyway, to go, okay. So as you can see, it would be almost 3 months between my important connections with all of you. Well, actually, it's 2 months. I don't know where you came up with 3 months. The next paragraph, I have no conceivable idea why Commissioner Huxley would again be in 2 consecutive department meetings, question mark. It's unacceptable. Again, I don't know what's so difficult to see that it's inconceivable when that's the way that the meetings have been scheduled on a document that was created prior to January 9th, 2018. Regarding today's agenda, these are items that I'm most familiar with and ones I'm responsible to participate in, exclamation. So I will see you all at 1:15. If Commissioner Huxley is uncomfortable, then he can make arrangements to do something different with his time at the annex. Okay, thank you. That is the entirety of the email. I called or spoke with with Administrator Schroeder and said I was not going to participate in such an embarrassing potential conflict, and I chose not to attend. And it has degraded from there. This whole thing is an embarrassment. It's a disgrace, in my opinion, absolute disgrace. The only option that I will support is to continue as is in these meetings that the administrator has the authority to schedule. If the administrator wants to change the frequency or something, that's the administrator's authority to do that. But this is preposterous.
Well, and I agree with that, and I'm also going to make one other statement about Commissioner Boyce's ability to talk to department heads. He certainly can do that at will as he wishes.
Oh, I think there's a question there.
No, I'm not questioning that at all.
I've been told that I can't have emails from him. Okay?
No, that's not so. I think you misunderstood.
Yeah. So
The
here we are.
emails going
That
to all
schedule.
3 of us are
we
not.
going to stay with that schedule? Is that where we're going to hang our hat on for future department head meetings? And are you refusing to have more than 1 or all 3 potentially commissioners there to do their job and learn all they can at these meetings?
I think
That's
what we
number 1.
need to do is abide by Council Huddle's
I didn't hear him weigh in on this.
Yes, he just
we
did.
We could ask him if he thinks the schedule is clean, effective, good for the citizens, good for the department heads, to have 1 commissioner go two times in a row, any one of the 3 of us. And I'm sorry, Commissioner Huxley, if it's 2.5, 3 months, whatever, late June or mid-June to mid-September is 3 months.
Would you be more comfortable if 1 commissioner, they do it a rotational schedule every single meeting rather than by the month?
No, because I miss out on 2 weeks of important, or 2 meetings, of important give and take. And there's no reason that we can't have multiple commissioners there. That's the bottom line.
But Council Huddle just advised us against that.
He says it's not breaking the law. We're on our honor. We're going to get.
Okay, maybe I need to go through those reasons again, why he advised us
I
against
understand your
it.
opinion, ma'am.
Cost.
What's the most important
Time.
focus here? To spend time with all the people that we're responsible for. To not find a way to say, you stay out of this room. And you, well, yeah, 2 times in a row. I think the best option is for me to just be there all the time. I'll report back to you along with County Administrator. And that's what I'm going to ask for here.
Commissioner Huxley?
Absolutely not. That is not up for the commissioners to decide how many times the administrator is going to have
That's where,
a
That's why we hired an
meeting.
administrator.
that's why you hired an administrator.
And
Okay.
again, this is absurd.
It surely is, sir.
It is a disgrace.
All right.
It's
if
been
there-
2 years of
if there's-
absurdity.
so
Actually, it's been
bottom
3.5
line-
years of
Is there
absurdity.
support for a motion then?
Is there support for a motion to continue the schedule as written?
I heard that.
Or as determined if there are changes by the sole authority of the county administrator. I'll motion that.
Okay? Do we
Before
have
you
a
do, I will be at all the meetings, okay? I will be at all the meetings that I'm available to get to.
I think.
You may
Commissioner
have to,
Huxley?
Motion. And
Okay.
I-
Do we have a second to the
your
motion?
choice.
I'll second that motion. Any further discussion? Call for the question.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed.
Okay, so it's
It's
about.
12:04
We
and,
have more, but we have a public hearing at 1.
yeah, we
so-
do.
To have lunch
know
and
what?
come back.
Why don't we just have lunch and come back to the public hearing and then finish off the meeting?
Okay, thank you,
I
Chair.
will highlight that there'll be a high school tour here. They're coming here at 12:30 in this room. I will be taking questions from the students about government in general, and they'll probably sit in for the first part of the public hearing, and then Julie Swift will be taking them around to the DA, juvenile, and assessors, and taking
So
them
we
up
need
for
to
a
be
tour.
on our best behavior? That would be nice.
I didn't say anything.
Well, I'm saying it. So we'll recess till 1 o'clock.